Hi guys, so in this video I just wanted to do a quick example for my class on how to do a 3D dice randomization inside of Houdini. So the first thing we want to do is import our dice file. So I'm going to go and push tab and type in geometry. That creates a geometry node for me. I'll call this die, and that's going to be our dice roll. So here in the file node, when I double click into the die file or node, I have the file node, and in here I am clicking on the arrow here or the open floating file chooser. So I'm gonna go here and go to my desktop where I saved it, and I have the digeo, which is just a cube that I exported as an OBJ. And then I have a texture for this. So let's assign the texture quickly. We have the materials palette. I'm just going to create a principled shader. Click on that, go to textures, base color. I'm going to tell it to use texture and assign a texture. I have the texture here, and I don't want to do it as a sequence, and I don't want it to be based off of the frame. Let me see if it lets me select it again. There we go. So if you do see like a weird name on your image, it's because it's trying to make it into a sequence because I named it a D6 texture. So it thinks that the number is a frame number. So if you uncheck that and then reselect the file, it should be correct. I click accept and then drag and drop that onto the dice to give us the texture assigned. Go back to our main tab here and go to OBJ. That brings us back to our die file. So now that we have that, we can start working on our code. To access our Python editor, I'm going to go to Windows and go down to the Python source editor. That's going to allow us to type in Python code that we will work with. First thing I want to do is type in import who, and that will be for our Houdini commands that we're going to be using. And I'm going to set up a few variables here that I can use in this simple code. First, I want to set this die file and get access to it. So the code for that is going to be die equals who.node. And the node we want to access is at the OBJ level, the die, and that's it. So that's going to be inside of single quotes, and that is the expression for that. Then I'll stick with just that one for now. Now that I'm thinking about it, we also need a transform node on this die, so I'm going to double click back into it and just push tab and go to transform transform. There we go. And just to make it simple, I'm going to take off the one so that way it's named transform. And I'm going to put the display flag there. Perfect. Okay, so a few other variables that I want to have access to are the object level because we're going to want to get access to it a few times, so it'll make it a little bit easier. I'm going to say obj equals who.node, and it will be just the obj level here. So it's just quite a bit shorter, so we can use it. Then we want to be able to take this dice and duplicate it out, have multiple dice available to us, and we can adjust it with a variable in the code. And then we also want to, in the future, be able to choose which dice we're using. So right now we only have a d6 or a six-sided dice, but we might have different options in the future. So let's take a look at doing that. Number of dice, and to start off with, we'll say that it's 5, and then number of sides, that's going to be equal to 6 for this. And then we're going to have a big loop that happens that is going to be based off of this number of dice. So that's how it's going to generate each dice. And let's look at count is equal to 0. So that's going to be our variable that we're using to be able to loop a certain amount of times. Another import that I forgot that we need because we're randomizing random numbers is import random, which is a Python module that we're importing there so that we can use some of the random functions that are available to us. Okay, so we're going to start off the while loop now. So while count, which is a variable we created here, is less than the number of dice, we are going to proceed to do whatever's inside of the loop. In order for the loop to work, we're going to do an indent, and anything that is indented will belong to that function. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that the dice is completely resetted back at the origin the way it is right now. So to do that, we're going to make an if statement. So if count is equal to 0, what are we going to do? We are going to set the parameter for the transform to 0 for the translate x, y, and z inside of the transform here. Since that's going to be a lot of typing, let's make a variable here as well for the dice. So let's just say die transform is equal to who.node. Oops. Let's try that again. And it's going to be obj die and transform. So that way we have access to that die transform easily so that we can work with it. So now what we're going to do is call die transform dot parm, which is parameter tx. And we're going to set that to 0. So to do that, we're going to say set 0. So just to speed this up a little bit, I'm going to copy this and paste it a few times here. I believe that's going to be fine. So it's going to start off with tx, ty, and tz. Then r, x, r, y, and rz. So that sets the transforms back to 0 for anything that might be changed when we are working with this. Okay, so then I want to do a create a variable here at this point inside of the loop because I want to make sure that when it happens, that it finds it at the beginning of the loop, so the very first time. So as long as count is equal to 0, what I want to do is say that all geo. So I'm creating this variable here, all geo, that is going to be equal to who.node. Obj, actually, we have a variable for that, so let's not do who.node, we just have obj dot children. So obj.children, which obj is this variable up here, which is who.node.obj. So anything that is inside of the obj level, and at this time right now we only have the die, but if we have multiple dice, which in the future we will be creating, we want to make sure that we get rid of them. So the die is the first object in here, and it's the only thing that's going to be in there when we create it, and we're only going to have other dice. So I'm also going to create another variable for a count. This time it's going to be an object count, so I called it O_count, and 0. Here we're going to do a for loop. So this is how for loops work. We're going to say for, and then we're going to create a variable here. I'm going to create object as the variable. So for the objects that are inside of this variable, so I'm going to type in the word in, we are going to, let me put that variable really quick. We're going to loop. So if there's only one object, it's only going to go through once. If there's multiple objects, then it'll go more times until it's gone through every object that is inside of all geo. So what do we want to do? If O count is greater than 0, so after the first time it runs, I want it to take the object, which is this variable here, which is all the objects that are in here, depending on which iteration happens. Object dot destroy. So that's going to destroy that node that we will be working with. Let me make this a little bit higher so we can work with that better. And then just to make sure that we get past the first count here, I'm going to make sure that I say O count is equal to O count plus 1. So that way we get past 1, and then depending on how many objects are in here, it will increment past that. But all I really care about is that first one. So as long as it's past 0, then it's going to run that. And then once it's done, it's just going to exit out of this loop. Okay, so now what do we want to do? So this is going to basically reset our transforms And then this section here is going to delete all of their dice except the original die. So if it's not count 1, what do we want to do? All I want to do is basically duplicate this die. So it's going to be else who dot copy nodes to clipboard. So basically what this is going to do is just do a copy, and then we need to do a paste, which will duplicate our die. And then we have to tell it where to look for that. And in this case, it has to be a list. And in order to create a list, we do that by adding a bracket here. And then we create a variable over here for the object that we need to duplicate, which is die. So I'll just call that variable here. There we go. And then we can do who dot copy, or not copy, sorry, paste nodes from clipboard, since we already had copied into the clipboard. And where do we want to copy it to? We want to copy it to obj, which is, again, the variable that we defined up here. And now that we have done that, let's just make it so that it is a little bit more readable. And so I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to say die transform dot parameter tx. We're going to set that to whatever is the count times 5. So when we do that, basically each time this loops, right now we haven't set it up, and actually I want to make sure that's not in the else statement, but it happens for everything inside of the loop. So when this happens here, the count is going to be increasing, and we haven't set that, so I might as well set that right now. Count equals count plus 1. So we're taking die transform parameter tx, and we're taking it based off the count. Each time the count increments by 1. The first time it goes through, it's going to be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, all the way until it reaches 5, and then it won't run anymore. So when it starts off at 0, it's going to be 0 times 5, so it'll be at 0. And then after that, it will be 5, 10, 15, and it'll create more dice based off of that. So this should be at least the beginning of the script that gives us the dice being duplicated out. So let's take this and apply this code and see if it works. There we go. We get 5 dice when it runs. If we change the number of dice, we can bring it down to 3 and apply. See that it gets rid of them and it only runs the 3 dice. Perfect. It's exactly what we want to happen. Right now, they're all staying exactly the same. They're just creating more based off of how many dice we need. But now we can go to the next step where we're setting up the random values, and we're setting orientations for each one of these values. So how do we do that? So that's still going to be within the loop that we have here. We're going to, actually first we have to go up here. Let's set a, where do I want to do that? I'm going to put all my variables up here together. And then I'm going to set up a random dot seed. So that should seed our random values, so that way we get different random values each time. And now that we have done that, we can use random a little bit more effectively. And I am going to say die roll is equal to random dot rand int, and then we're going to say that it's going to be based between 1 and number of sides. And just so that we can see what's going on right now, let's do a print, and we will do die roll. So let's run this here, and a console should pop up. Oh, it popped up in my other window. Let me move it over really quick so you can see it. So I put it as a string. That was my mistake. Sorry. It is a variable, so we just need to do it without being inside of quotes. So let's try that again. There we go. So we have 3, and it's giving us random values, and each time we run it, it'll give us 3 more values. So apply, run. That's kind of the idea that we want. So now we have a random number between 1 and 6, and all we have to do at this point is assign rotation values to each one of these. So I don't need this. That was just kind of to show you guys how it works. So we'll say if die roll is equal to 1, then we need to tell it what we're going to do. So it's going to be die transform dot parm tx, or not tx, sorry, rx dot set. And what are we going to set it to? I am not sure yet, so I'm just going to set up a 0 value here really quick. And I am going to do y and z. So I'm going to set up all the conditions first, and then we will randomize it. Or we'll make it work. So this is rz. So this is for a die roll of 1, but we need 1 through 6 basically. So that's 1. Let me make sure that I do it correctly. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to change these values to match. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if we wanted to, we can also say, because all these will be part of that same, it can't be something other than these options. So I'm just going to make these elif statements. There we go. So now we just need to figure out what the rotation values need to be. In this case, for the 6, we already know that 6 is on the 6th side, so we have that correctly. So get the die here, and if we take this rotation, let's try here, 90 degrees on the X. We have 3. And if we go to 180, we have 1. So let's try both of those really quick. So 1 for the rotate X is going to be 180. 2 for the, 3 for the rotate X will be 90, and it should be 0 for the other values. So that's great. Let's go there, and then let's take the rotate value on the Y and see what happens at 90. This is just going to be spinning it in circles, so we don't need to worry about that one. Let's look at the Z. So 90, we have 5. So, and that is for the rotate Z. 5, go to 90. And let's try negative 90, which should be the other one that can get us to 2. So 2 will be here, which is negative 90 on the Z. And it looks like the only one we're missing right now is 4, which is here. So we probably have to do, let's try here, do negative 90 here. There we go, we get 4. So that's negative 90 on the X. Great. So let's take a look and see if this works correctly. I am going to look here. And when we apply this, we should get different values each time that corresponds to what they are. Great. So that is the die roll program, at least a simple version of it. I'll be getting into more Python and Houdini in the future, but this is just a really quick thing that I'm doing for a class that I'm running right now. So if you guys are a little bit lost, I'll do a more kind of ground up understanding of what Python is doing in Houdini in the future. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the tutorials. If you have any questions, comment them down below, and I will make sure to get back to you guys as soon as possible. Anyways, see you guys in the next video. Bye.